I think the answer is a lot of different things. Of course, people, by the time they get homeless, they're dealing with all kinds of problems in their lives. A lot of things have gone wrong for them. What we're generally finding is, although people who are homeless need a lot of different things, the sort of discovery of people in the homeless services field in the last few years is that there's an order you do things, and housing first has sort of become the slogan. But it really works. You know, people, if you get people off the street and into housing, then deal with the other problems they have, it just works a lot better and is a lot more, I think, respectful to the people, because that, if you ask homeless people what they need first, it's housing is what they'll always say.
You know, there's always this talk about these people falling through the cracks, and in measuring them has also been an issue. In terms of the United Nations, their last report, for example, was about a decade ago. So what do we know about the world's demographics when it comes to homelessness? I mean, is there a certain person who falls into this category? I know men tend to be homeless more than women, but what do we know?
Well, I think we know several things, at least in the United States. We know that homelessness is associated with certain things. I mentioned mental illness. There's very high rates of homelessness among people with mental illness for reasons that, at least for people who deal with mentally ill people a lot, the reasons are obvious. They have a hard time getting work and keeping work. They have a hard time sort of connecting with the things you have to connect with. They often are estranged from their families, and for most people, the family is a protective factor against homelessness. But people with mental illness often become cut off from their families, so that's part of the problem.
Some years ago, I was a reporter in California, and I did a story on an elderly man who was homeless. And he was in California for a reason. I mean, I think he started in the Midwest. It's a little warmer. If you're going to be out on the streets, it's a better place to be, that sort of thing. But when I think back and on that story, and I think about how many stories I've seen along the way of homeless people, and I know this is a field you're in. Talk to me about the challenges, the difficulties. What are the victories like? And yet there are so many that do fall through the cracks.
Yeah. And the challenges are really just a couple of things. One, it's a problem a lot of people would just like to ignore. You know, we hear so often from people in various communities that we don't have a homeless problem here, when clearly they do. Everybody who's working in the field knows there's a homeless problem. So it's getting people to admit that there's a problem there. And then, you know, unfortunately, there's a widespread attitude that people sort of bring it upon themselves, or they want to be homeless, or they deserve to be homeless, or whatever. I mean, another part of the challenge that I think we're solving a lot better is for the longest time, the real attitude problem among the general public was you couldn't do anything about it. There's nothing that's going to work for people like this. That is proving to be false. In the U.S. and some of the cities that have really looked at this, they found it actually costs a lot more to leave people, particularly people with problems like severe mental illness. If you leave them on the streets, they go to jail, they go to homeless shelters, they go to hospitals, emergency rooms. If you house them, they stop going to all those things. And the housing actually costs less money than all those emergency services do. So I think that kind of information, people sharing it, I think it'd be very helpful, because I think it's a problem that we can solve, and it's about time to make that happen.